Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome our viewers on Torah Anytime. Okay, so we're starting on Chaf Chesem Beis, the Mishnah. The Mishnah is around right before the very wide line. Rabbi Gamliel Omer B'chol Yom V'Yom Espal Adam Shmona Esrei. So this is our Shmona Esrei, our Amidah, the silent meditative prayer that we say 3 times a day is based on, is predicated upon, really upon this Mishnah. Rabbi Gamliel Omer, the great Rabbi Gamliel, he said that you daven Shmona Esrei, B'chol Yom V'Yom Espal Adam Shmona Esrei. You daven Shmona Esrei. Okay, let's get immediately into the Gemara. The Gemara, which is around 5 lines past the Mishnah. Hani Yud Ches Keneged Mi. 18 is equivalent to what? What does it correspond to? Why do we have Shmona Esrei? And we'll see that indeed it's no longer 18, it's actually 19. But the original Yud Ches Keneged Mi, what does it correspond to? Amar Rav Hillel, Breit Reb Shmuel, Bar Nachmeni, Keneged Yud Ches Eskar Shomer David. So Reb Hillel says in the name of Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmeni that it corresponds to 18 Askaras that David says in Tehillim Chav Ches. We're in Tehillim Chav Tes in Psalm 29. He says Havel Hashem b'nei Elim. So there's Yud Ches mentionings of Hashem, utterances of Hashem's name. Rav Yosef Amar Keneg Yud Ches Askaras B'Kriyas Shema. Bar Shalom's name is 18 times in Kriyas Shema. Amar B'Tamchim Bar Amar Rabbi Shimon Belevi Keneg Shmona Esrei Chulyos Shebeshedra. And Rabbi Tamchim says that it's corresponding to the 18 vertebrae in the spine. Now we know the spine has the atlas, it has the lumbar, the thoracic, the cervical vertebrae, there are many different types of vertebrae. If you count the vertebrae, it's not 18. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think if you consult an anatomy expert, I think it's 24. So, I'm not going to get into the intricacies now of how Chazal came up with 18, but of course, Moshe Emes was Rav Emes. What the Torah says is accurate and true. And it happens to be that there are ribs and there are floating ribs, there's vertebrae under the neck, and what Chazal say is absolutely accurate, and it's absolutely fascinating how it's depicted and how it actually is reconciled, but that's for a very different discussion. If I had charts and diagrams handy, we would do that, but you have to understand that even if somebody tells you, what do you mean, there are far more vertebrae than 18 vertebrae, you have to understand the Chazal knew what they were talking about. And remember, if Belsky got into this whole discussion, he proved it, and others have proved it as well. Now, the Gemara says further, when a person davens, when a person prays, they should prostrate themselves, they should bow, not a full prostration, but bow their back. And until the vertebrae are actually protruding out. If you looked at the back, you looked at the bare back, the exposed back, you'd see that the vertebrae would be protruding out. Okay, now, the Gemara says further, by the 2 dots on the very bottom, Tan Rabbanon, Shimon HaPekuli. Pekuli means he was a merchant that sold cotton, tufts of cotton. His dear Yuches brachas in front of Rabbi Gamliel. He was the one that was Masader, the 18 brachas of Shemona Esrei in front of Rabbi Gamliel, al Seder Yavne and Yavne. And Amalhem Rabbi Gamliel l'chachamim klum yesh adam she'yodei l'saki brachas tzdukim. He says Rabbi Gamliel was looking for a candidate. He was looking for a contestant, somebody that would be proficient enough to be able to innovate a new bracha. And a bracha that would save the Jewish people from the tzaddukim, from heretics, from the Sadducees, from minim, from people that tried to undermine and corrupt the Torah Kedosha. And this was very, very important. Unfortunately, there were people amongst Klal Yisrael that were creating a lot of problems. And therefore, they needed somebody to come up with a bracha that would be a bracha that would be devoted to Lam Al-Shin, what we call the Lam Al-Shinim, to those that cast dispersion on Klal Yisrael. Okay, so what happened? Amad Shmuel HaKatan rose, he stood up, V'tikna, and he was masakin it. He came up with this 19th bracha. Now, there's something very important to understand here. Okay, let's just rewind a little. Let's reverse. Okay, so just for the benefit of those, we're on the Gemara in Daf Yomi review here, Daf Chaf Chesem Beis, and we're speaking about the Shmona Esrei, the 18 brachas that correspond, according to Rabbi Tanchum, to the 18 vertebrae in the spine. We spoke about the scientific anomaly or the Talmudic anomaly of how to reconcile the fact that there may be 24 vertebrae, but Chazal knew exactly what they're talking about. So they needed someone to innovate. They needed somebody to create a 19th bracha for those, against those that are heretics and those that are Sadducees that undermined and corrupted the Torah. And the Gemara says that Shmuel HaKatan was the man for the job. Now, he cannot have been an ordinary individual. You have to understand, the Shmona Esrei was created by the Anshe Knesset Agdolah, the men of the Great Assembly. You're talking about people that were prophets. Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi. These were people that had Ruach HaKodesh. These were the greatest of the greats. They came up with the Shmona Esrei. The Shmona Esrei has esoteric secrets in it. I'll just give you a glimpse of how powerful the Shmona Esrei is. The Shmona Esrei is so powerful that if you count the tevos, you count the words in the Shmona Esrei, so it comes out to Magen Avram, the Bracha Magen Avram has 42 words, and Mechayim Mesim has 51 words, Atar Kadosh has 14 words, Atar Chonin L'Adam Das has 17 words, and if you count it all up, it ends up being, in totality, it's 596 words, which is Gematria Yerushalayim. And which is very interesting because, people think that religious Jews are not Zionists. And I can't think of any greater Zionists. We're the ones that speak about Yerushalayim Ircha Barachim Tashuv 3 times a day. In benching, Birchas Mazon, we say, V'nei Yerushalayim Ircha Barachim Tashuv. Everything that we do, our focus is on Yerushalayim, is on Jerusalem, is on Eretz Yisrael. And you see that the Shmona Esrei has Esamach David Avdecha Ben Hiritz Atzmiach V'Karan Tom V'Sech Zan Einer B'Shulchan Tzion Barachimim. It's all about Tzion Barachim. It's all about the Mitzapel Yeshua, about the salvation. It's all about yearning for the return to Yerushalayim. Now, if you add up, that's 596. But if you add Hashem Safasei Tiftach, which is the preface, which is the preliminary, the prefatory prayer. So Hashem Safasei Tiftach, and the epilogue, which is Yilu Ratzon Imrei Fi V'Egel L'Fnech Hashem Siri V'Gali, 16 words. 596 plus 16 is precisely Taryag, 613. So the entire Shmona Esrei has 613 words in it. So that includes V'Lam Al-Shinim. So what's a raya? Shmuel HaKatan was succeeding. You have to understand who Shmuel HaKatan was. Shmuel HaKatan was in the second generation Tana. That means that according to most, it's Machlokes Rishonim, it's a dispute amongst the greatest authorities of Rishonim, but some Rishonim hold that he was before the Churban Bayis Rishon, before the Churban Bayis Sheni, before the destruction of the Second Temple. Others say he was immediately after the destruction of the Second Temple. But regardless, he was a contemporary of the greatest of the greats. And he was a second generation Tana. He was someone, Shmuel HaKatan was not, even though his name was Shmuel HaKatan, Shmuel the Kleiner, like for example, Klein, today, the name Klein, so Klein means Klein, it means small. And that's why the famous Rav Menashe Klein, who was a posek, and he was a Rav in Borough Park and a survivor of the Holocaust, so he used to always sign his tshuvas. If you look at it, Shmuel HaKatan. Now, what does it mean? Shmuel the small one. So aside from him being a humble man, that was his surname. That was his family name. It was a Hebrai's version of Klein. So he was saying Shmuel Klein, Menashe Klein. That was his name, Menashe Klein. Shmuel HaKatan, aside from it, he got that appellation Katan not because his last name was Klein. He got that appellation Katan because it says that he was a very, very humble man. He viewed himself as being extremely small. He was the one that predicted the Asar Harugei Malchus. He had Ruach HaKodesh. He told people that Rabbi Shmuel is to be killed, that Rabbi Shimon, he knew, he was able to prophesize this, you understand? It says about him that when he died, they buried him with his key and his notebook. And there's very, very deep Kabbalistic things. What does it mean he's buried with his key and his notebook? Usually you don't necessarily bury people with their possessions. I mean, exceptions. He died childless, but they say that his chusim were enormous. Shmuel HaKatan was known that Rabbi Gamliel convened 7 great sages to intercalate the year to make it Ibr Shana. So there was one person that it seems that, I don't remember exactly, I think it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin around Daf Yud Aleph, and one person came late, or it wasn't so appropriate according to Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel said whoever it was, should get up, and Shmuel HaKatan got up and basically was about to, and it wasn't him, he wasn't the culprit, but he wanted to protect the other person from shame. That's how great Shmuel HaKatan was. So Shmuel, there's a lot of legends about Shmuel Katan. It's interesting because there's not too many memories in the Gemara from him or halachas from him. There's in Pirkei Avos we have from Shmuel Katan, but he was truly huge. He was very, very, very great. His Gemara, the Medrash speaks about how when it came times of droughts, they asked him to daven for the rain, and many other such stories. So Shmuel Katan, for somebody to go ahead and take the Shemona Esrei, which has such, again, esoteric, such deep secrets, and which is our formula, it's our prescription, it's our regimen for having Hashem's divine favor. That's our tefillah. When a person says tefillah, they mean the Amidah, they mean the Shemona Esrei. For someone else to come up with an added bracha, it must mean that he had to be the greatest of the greats, Shmuel Katan. So what happened was that he came up with the bracha of V'la Malshinim. Now it says V'la Malshinim alti sikva, for the Malshinim, those that commit scandal, those that scandalize other Jews, those that snitch on other Jews, those that have libelous things against other Jews, that slander other Jews, alti sikva, there should be no hope for them. V'la Malshinim alti sikva, v'chol aminim, and the heretics, karega toved, like a moment they should be devoured, they should be toved, they should be destroyed. And then how does it continue? Different. They should be excised. They should be cut off. Now, we remember that we had a previous Gemara in Brachos between Rav Meir and his wife Bruria, where Rav Meir wanted to daven, he wanted to pray for the demise of his wicked peers, of his wicked contemporaries, and Bruria was very opposed to it. She said, "No, don't daven that they should die. Instead, daven they should change." So it's interesting because there's actually machloikis rishonim between the Riyakar and Rabbeinu Bechaya. This is Rabbeinu Bechaya ben Asher, who wrote the Karakemach, who also wrote the Rabbeinu Bechaya L'Torah. Of what does it mean V'la Malshinim? Are we actually begging Hashem, are we asking Hashem that they should die? So the Riyakar says, yes, we're kipshuto, kerega tove, they should be devoured or they should be destroyed like a moment. Yukaresu, they should be excised, they should be destroyed. However, Rabbeinu Bechaya says, no, Jews don't daven for people to die. He says what it means is that spiritually they should change, or it means that they should be afflicted, they should be persecuted, they should be oppressed, so that the Yisurim should drive them to do tshuva. As a matter of fact, the Chasam Sofer in the Drasha says something astounding. He says that Tzedukim and Minim, he makes a distinction, a differentiation between Tzedukim and Minim, Sadducees and heretics, or apostates, versus Rishon, evil, wicked people. He says, wicked people, you should not daven that they should be destroyed. You hear this? Wicked people are Taivaniks, Averoniks, all right, people that don't follow the Torah. He says they're being led by lust, by temptation. He says they're not like apostates, they're not like heretics, not like Sadducees, who are looking to undermine, who are looking to maliciously to do infractions against the Torah. No, that's not what evil people, that's not their objective. Evil people are just led by lust. He says, so evil people, you should daven that they should return to Hashem. But the Sadducees or the heretics, the apostates, you should daven that they should be killed. So apparently, Rameir, the people that afflicted him, that persecuted him, apparently, according to the Chasam Sofer at least, they weren't heretics, they were just bad people. And bad people you should daven. So when we look at, let's say, the people that are not following Hashem's Torah, in Western society, instead of davening that they should, Hashem, be destroyed, most of them, they don't know anything about Hashem, they don't know anything about the Torah. Many of them don't. So maybe should daven that they should get better. Okay, now what happened is that V'tikna, he was Mesaki, Shmuel Katan was Mesaki, the 19th bracha of Shemona Esrei. And again, it shows you that the Taryag, if you add up all the words, it's 613, and it includes the Shmuel Katan, then obviously it was sort of bashert, it was providential that should be added. So L'shana Acheres Shacha, the next year, Shmuel Katan forgot the bracha. He forgot the bracha of V'la Malshinim. The Hishkifba, Hishkif was in the word Hashkifa, it means that he peered, he gazed, he looked very seriously and intently into it, because he was trying to remember it. Shtayim v'shalosh shows, 2 or 3 hours. He stood there at the Midah. Can you imagine a chazan, if it was in Brooklyn, he wouldn't last 10 minutes. He was standing there, and he's trying to get his attention. Listen, there are people in Nebuch that are in the year of Avelis. They are. I'm telling you, one guy confided to me. He says, he would go down for the Amud. He says, but he's mortified. He's petrified. Because one time he davened and they told him, you went 2 minutes too long. By Yishtabach, he goes to 8 o'clock meeting. It has to be 8:15 and 8:16. How dare you? They lynched him. He says, so I'm saying in Brooklyn, with the guy, Shmuel Kant would never survive. 2 or 3 hours. Can you imagine this? 2 or 3 hours. He stayed for and they didn't depose him. They didn't remove him. By the way, it's interesting. Heluhu, we're going to see in a second. The Gemara asks, Amai lo Heluhu, so why didn't they depose him? They should have taken him down. They should have said, listen, first of all, Tirchad Jabura, it's a strain on everybody. People got to get to work. It had to be weekday because for Lamashim, you never say on Shabbos. Unless you forgot. The halach is, if you forget Shemon Esrei, if you forget that it's Shabbos, you say the weekday Shemon Esrei, you have to continue. Right? But that would be a very, very anomalous, that would be a rare situation. So, for Rav Yehuda Amarav, so Rav Yehuda Amarav asked the question, Tov b'chol ha'brachos kulon. He says that if a person makes a mistake in any part of Shemon Esrei, we say, he had a bad hair day. He didn't drink enough coffee. He's tired. He had a bad sleep. Someone kept him up at night, whatever. We let him, we're very, very patient and forbearing. We say, okay, let him stay up as a Shliach Tzibur.
Why would you have if there's such a long pause?
That's what I'm saying. Okay. So, but Brachos HaTzedukim though, V'lam Al-Shinu, if he makes a mistake in Brachos HaTzedukim, the halacha is Malanoisai. You depose him. You got to get rid of him. Why? Because we're afraid that maybe this guy, he's a secret Reformed Jew. He came into the Orthodox shul, but maybe really he's got other motives, and he's tampering with the bracha. He says, I just went ahead and I went to the New York City and I ratted on all the Hasidic yeshivas and I said there's no secular English department or something, which obviously is not true. Right? There is secular English department in most of these schools, but maybe the guy is one of these advocates, or maybe one of these rebel rousers. So therefore, if he starts funkering, if he starts making a mistake with Lamoshinim, right away we throw him out. But any other bracha, we're very, very patient. That's why when Malanoi, so we get rid of him. By the way, Malanoi, so what does Malan mean?
Lift.
Malan means lift. Right? So how does Malan over here, what does it mean depose him? Get rid of him.
Lift him up.
They pick him up! Brute force, get out! See, there's a beautiful pshat though. You know what Malin means? Because the halach is, we have it in Gemara and Brachos. The halach is that when you daven, you're supposed to daven. How are you supposed to daven? I've been into a shul, Rabbi Khan shul on Avenue J is like this. I don't know if there used to be the old shul, I don't know if the new shul is, I haven't been there really, but you're supposed to daven ma'akim, from the straits, from the depths, down. What? The word shul has right, so you're supposed to go down when you daven ma'akim. So it means that when they have to get rid of him, they have to pull him up from the trenches. That's Malin, that's what it means. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. That's Malin, I say. Okay, so it's saying, so he says that, Amar Abaye, so I'm sorry, Shiny Shmuel Khan. So why didn't they get rid of Shmuel Khan? If he was making a mistake with Lam Al Shinim, they should get rid of him. So do you tikno? Because he was on Masakin, he enacted the bracha. So since he enacted the bracha, so it can't be that he would make a mistake on it, that he would have ulterior motives or a different agenda, pernicious or malicious intent or insidious intent. It doesn't make sense. But maybe he retracted, maybe he became a bad guy, a dark side. Amar Abaye, Abaye says, no, we have a tradition. Gemiri means a tradition. We have a tradition that Tava Lahavi Bisha, that a good guy, a good person, a person that has integrity, a person that is a tzaddik, a person that's a good person, Lahavi Bisha, he doesn't turn bad. Okay, then the Gemara says, is that true? The Gemara says, we see that there was a person in Jewish history that did turn back, that did become bad. The Gemara then says, well, the person, that means that he started off as bad, then became good and reverted to his negative behavior, but a person who was always good won't ever deviate and won't ever default. Okay, the whole discussion over there. But I just want to I'd like to let's go to Daf Chav Vav Beis. And now that's page 52 or 26b. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's around 10 lines from the top. The second word off the line, Itmar. Rabbi Yosef bar Rabbi Chanina. Okay, everybody have it there? Okay. Itmar, Rabbi Yosef bar Rabbi Chanina. See, there's like a circle there by Tfilos, by the word Amar, Tfilos. Itmar, Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, Amar. Tfilos, where do we get our 3 times a day davening? Baruch Hashem, we're not as radical extreme as the Muslims. They do 5 times a day. 3 times a day is tough enough, right? Baruch Hashem. When we do it, we know what we're doing, okay? So, tefillos, we do 3 times a day. Where does it come from? What's the origin? What's the source of 3 times a day? Remember, the Rambam paskins that tefillah, mikra din, tefillah is midaraisa. But tefillah being biblical mitzvah, it doesn't mean that the formulation of the prayer, the liturgy is doraisa. That we have. That what?
That avos. Each one.
Right. But that, we're not right because we're about to say them same. But the idea of tefillah is doraisa. The idea of tefillah, everybody's mechuyev to tefillah, but the formulation and the regimentation of it and the way that it's enacted is through the Rabbanon. So how do we know we're supposed to daven 3 tefillahs a day? Very good, Meir. The Gemara says, Avos tiknum. The forefathers, the patriarchs, they were the ones that established it, because we know that Avram davened tefillah shacharis, and Yitzchok davened mincha, and Yaakov arvis, marv. Rabbi Shua Levi disagrees. Rabbi Shua Levi says tefillah is connected to midin tiknum. He says that no, the davening is connected to the karbonos. We brought a carbon shachar, a carbon ben arbayim, a mincha, time of mincha, and therefore. And the Gemara says, Tanya Kavasei, there's a brisa to support Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, but Tanya Kavasei Rabbi Shua Levi. There's a brisa that supports Rabbi Shua Levi. Tanya Kavasei Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, Avram Tiket Tefillah Shachar Shneim Aviyashkem Avram Babaker. The pasuk brings down that Avram Avinu arose early in the morning. The Gemara brings down all these proofs. Okay, now, what's interesting is that if you think about it, l'chara, if you look later in the Gemara says on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis, based on the Mishnah, on Daf Chav, the Mishnah is earlier, the Mishnah is on Chav Av Amud Aleph. So the Gemara on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis says that it's around, by the wide lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's around 7 lines from the wide lines, Tfilas Ha'erev Ein La Kva. That Tfilas Ha'erev means the evening prayer is not established. Ein L'kva means it's not established. Now, what does that mean it's not established? So Gemara says, My Ein L'kva, what does it mean it's not established, it's not set? Doesn't mean that there's no time frame for it, that you could pray the evening prayer, the Marav prayer all night long. Lessly, then the Mishnah say, Tfilas Ha'erev Kol Laila, that you could daven Marav all night long. That there's no moratorium, there's no limit. Ella, my ein l'kva, what does it mean it doesn't have a set, or it's not established? Commandamar tfilas arvis shus. Going according to the mandamar that holds that tfilas arvis is voluntary. That marv, you don't have to, it's not obligatory, it's not mandatory, you don't have to do it, it's a voluntary prayer. Damar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, tfilas arvis, that Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, tfilas arvis, Rabbi Gamliel Shita is that it's a chayva, that it's mandatory, that you have to do, it's obligatory. Rabbi Shua Amar Rishus, and Rabbi Shua says it's Rishus. All right, famous machlokes from Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Shua, and anybody that's current in the daf knows about the major arguments between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Shua, that Rabbi Gamliel ended up losing his position as the president of the High Court, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah took him over, which we'll get into Bezhem soon. We'll see what that's about. But the major disagreement, one of the major disputes between them was whether you have to daven Marav or not, whether Marav is just voluntary or it's obligatory. Now let's look at the Gemara says, Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Halacha kedivrei Amar Chayva. Abaya paskins that, like Rabbi Gamliel, that it's obligatory, and Rava Omer, Halacha kedivrei Amar Rishus. Rava paskins Rabbi Shua that it's voluntary, that it's Rishus. Okay. Now, before we go further, I just want to point out something very important, and that is that according to the shita that holds, again, if you go back, I'm sorry to drive you crazy playing musical chairs with the Daf Yomi here, but if you go back to Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who's the one that said that the 3 times a day prayers that we have correspond to the karbanos, to the offerings, and Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina holds that it corresponds to the forefathers. If it corresponds to the forefathers, how could anyone dare say? I mean, you have a shita of Rabbi Yeshua and a shita of Rava that say that Marav is optional. It's voluntary. If you're in the mood, do it. If you're not in the mood, don't do it. Tell it to any religious Jew today. They'll say, chutzpah nora, right? How do you say that? So why should Yaakov? Yaakov is the Bechir Shel Avos. Yaakov is the Tiferes. He's splendor. He's the choicest of all the Avos. He's the amalgam of Avram and Yitzchok. He's the fusion between them. So how can anybody say that? Yaakov's tefillah would be to minimize the efficacy of his prayer or the legality of his prayer, the legitimacy of his prayer. How did anybody say that? How does it make sense? If you hold like Rabbi Shua ben Levi, not like Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina, that it's connected the karbonis, then I can understand why. I'll tell you why. I'll give you several reasons. Now, I brought down a whole bunch of shittas that I found that Rashi says, Ibn Art, Mamash over there, Rashi says, because this prayer corresponds to Hektar Chalavim ve'emurim, and he says because the evening korban that was brought is the burning of the Evarim and the Chalavim, whatever was left, the fats, and that does not impede the atonement from the rest of the day's korbanos. So since it doesn't impede any atonement, therefore it's not mandatory. That's Rashi. Tosfos and the Rosh basically concur with Rashi. They're on the same page as Rashi. However, the Shittuk Metzes and the Sefer HaManig and the Vudraham, they say that sometimes the Evarim, the limbs that were left over from the morning and the afternoon offerings, sometimes they were already consumed by the day, and there was absolutely no necessity. It was something that didn't always come necessary, because sometimes it was already consumed throughout the day, and therefore the evening, sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't happen. So sometimes, if it only happened sometimes, therefore, if the Ma'ariv corresponds to that, therefore, Ma'ariv is not a chov. That's what they hold. Okay, so that I can understand. But if you hold on Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina, that Ma'ariv is corresponding to Yaakov Avinu, because the tefillos, the Shemon Esrei, the 3 Shemon Esreis that we say a day, correspond to each of the forefathers, then how can anybody have the temerity or the audacity to suggest that it's a rishus, that's voluntary, it's optional? You know, listen, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm not leaving to shul. I'm tired. That's it. Genug, it's enough. Shine. I did shachris and mincha. What do you want from me? What do you mean? And Yaakov Avinu is going to have tightness against you. So the Netziv explains, and it's brought down also from the Pnei Yeshua says the same thing. Whether the Netziv saw the Pnei Yeshua or not, I don't know. Chas v'shalom, he didn't do plagiarism. Obviously, back then, they weren't privy to. They didn't have, the Svarim, the repository of Svarim that we have today, and the printing press is as accessible as we have today. But they both say the same thing, basically. Netziv and the Pnei Yeshua say that the difference between Avram and Yitzchok's prayers and Yaakov Avinu's prayer, Avram was methodical. As Avram was premeditated, that he's going to get up in the morning, he's going to say Shachris. Yitzchok, likewise. It was all preordained, in others, that he wanted to do it. Yaakov Avinu was traveling, remember? Vayifka b'makom. He encountered a place, and he wanted to daven mincha, but he couldn't, because the sun set prematurely. Remember that? He had to lay there, he had to sleep there, kivah hashemesh, because the sun set prematurely. So he was forced into davening Ma'ariv. He didn't plan. Very good. Okay, that's Gemara Brachos, right? Tashlumin. But he didn't plan on it. So since he didn't plan on it, it wasn't ever enacted as a mandatory type of prayer, because by its very nature, it was something that wasn't really conceived by Yaakov as being the evening prayer. It was supposed to be his afternoon prayer. And that's how they explain, that's how they firm for, that's how they explain it. Now, by the way, halacha l'maisa, Rav Rishonim, most Rishonim, hold that like guess who? They hold like Rabbi Shua, that Ma'ariv is voluntary. Now, who are these Rishonim? So I'll itemize them. It's a whole litany of Rishonim. The Halachos Gedolos holds it, and Rabbi Hananel and the Rif, and Rashi and the Eshkol, and the Rambam and the Rav Yoh and the Smag and the Tosfos and the Rashba, they all hold that you don't have to daven Ma'ariv if you don't want to. All right, sounds good. You're getting a break, right? No, not so fast. Okay, now why? Well, why? What's the basis for that? What's the basis? Why would they say that? Okay, so listen to how the Rif and the Rush explain it. The Rif and the Rush say that since it's a machlokes between Abaye and Rava, whether we paskin like Rabbi Shua and Gamliel, remember Abaye says you paskin like Rabbi Gamliel, that it's obligatory, and Rava holds that you paskin like Rabbi Shua, that it's voluntary. When you have a machlokes between Abaye and Rava, the halacha is that we paskin like who? That we paskin like Rava. Anytime, this is very important, Yesod, very important foundation in Shas, as you're mastering Shas, all of you. So you have to know that there's a machlokes between Abaye and Rava, the halacha is like Rava. And since Rava says that the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, that Marav is voluntary, therefore most Rishonim hold that Marav is a Rishus. It's not obligatory, it's optional, it's voluntary. Whether you want to do it or not, it's up to you. Okay, fine. However, Rabbi Chananel and the Halachas Gedolos, they say that the reason why Rov Rishonim Paskin, most of the early authorities say that if you don't want Dam Rav, you don't have to, is not because of Abaye and Rava. They have a different girsa. You won't believe it. Do you hear this? They have a totally different girsa in the Gemara. They say there's never machlokes in Abaye and Rava. It was Rav and Shmuel in the Gemara. Different girsa than us. And they have, instead of Abaye and Rava, Rav and Shmuel. And anytime you have a machlokes in Rav and Shmuel, we always pass like Rav when it comes to anything other than Hilchos Mammon. Anything to do with Isser, we pass like Rav. Anything to do with Mammon, we pass like Shmuel. So you say, 1 second. Marav, what does it have to do with Isser? There's nothing forbidden, prohibited. So the Rishonim explain that Shekol Chayva HaMutelas Al Adam, any obligation that devolves upon a person in regards to anything in Judaism, any law of Judaism, and it's not to do with money, monetary obligation, or fiscal type of obligation, then Isuruhu, it's called an Isser. And since you have machlokes between Shmuel and Rav, and Shmuel says you have to do Rav, and Rav says you don't want to if you don't have to, it's optional. Therefore we pass like Rav because it's outside of something fiduciary, it's outside of something fiscal or monetary, and therefore you don't have to, therefore we pass like Rav. Okay? Now, the Rashba has a gewaldige chiddush. Listen to Rashba's chiddush. Rashba says that tefillah, remember, Rambam holds that you have to pray every day. God wants you to pray. That's Doraisa. That's biblical. That's divinely mandated. However, how we pray, that's Rabbanan. Right? 3 times a day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, it's all the Rabbanan. What we say, how we say it, when we say it, that's all the Rabbanan. He says, remember, we have a klal in Shas, a rule. Anytime you have a doubt about something rabbinic, we go Lakula. Suffer to Rabban Lakula. She says, so therefore, since you have machlokes about Marv, if it's obligatory, mandatory, or optional, voluntary, therefore we go, when in doubt, you go according to lenient opinion. And that's why Marv is not a chov. That's why you don't have to do it. However, the Rambam does bring down, sorry to disappoint everybody, but the Rambam does say that Shavin that we already accepted upon ourselves, became the min of Klal Yisrael, became the custom in Klal Yisrael, that we accepted upon ourselves as an imperative to daven Marv, and therefore we all have to daven Marv. By the way, I want to point out Tosfos. Tosfos says like this. Listen, everybody please look at Tosfos if you can. Tosfos on Chavav Amud Aleph, 26, Chavav Amud Aleph. It's the third Tosfos on the page. Chavav Amud Aleph. Fascinating Tosfos. Ta'ah v'lo yispal arvis. If somebody erred, somebody committed a mistake, and he didn't daven Marv, so what happens? Mispal b'shachar shtayim. The next morning, he has to compensate. He's got to make up. And he's got to daven 2 shachrises. Right? By the way, there's a lot of, we don't have the time to get into it. I think that we probably a few years ago we discussed it. But let's say if it was Rosh Chodesh Marv, let's say Mincha was Rosh Chodesh, and you forgot Yalav Yavo, you didn't daven, or let's say you forgot Mincha, you have a makeup prayer by Marv, but did you lose a Yalav Yavo? Did you not lose a Yalav Yavo? There's a lot of fascinating questions. Let's say Mincha, Friday afternoon Mincha, and you forgot, and it was Rosh Chodesh, you forgot Yalav Yavo Mincha. Now it's Shabbos. Totally new day, Shabbos, many different fascinating psukim. Okay, but let's get into Tosfos. The headline of Tosfos is that I made a mistake, I didn't daven Ma'ariv, mispal b'shachar shtayim, so you should daven shachars twice. Alright, make up. Vim toimer, v'amar Rav l'kamon, tfilas avrish shows, the Gemara says that we said that Amar Rav l'kamon. By the way, this shows you that Tosfos Paskins, that Tosfos said that the Girsa was Rav and Shmuel, not Abaye and Rava. Right, because he has Rav over here. He doesn't have he doesn't have. Very interesting. He says tefillas arvis rishus, that you don't have to daven Marv if you don't want to. So why would you have to have a makeup then? If you have to daven Marv, then you need a makeup. If you don't have to daven Marv, you don't need a makeup. Good kasha from Tosfos. You hear the question from Joel? Yeah, it's a good question, no? What do you need a makeup for? You don't even have to daven it. The Kaimel Kavasei Bisurim, we pass like Rav. If somebody forgets, by the way, Marv, if it's Rosh Chodesh and he forgets by Marv Yalav Yov, the law is that he doesn't have to repeat Shemona Esrei, because since we don't sanctify the new moon at night, therefore, Marv Rosh Chodesh, you don't have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. So he says, V'lomalei high time, why do you have to say, call on to that? Typically, the Tfilas HaRishus. Simple. You don't have to repeat Marv on Rosh Chodesh, because you don't even have to daven Marv if you don't want to. You were a nice boy, you did it. You didn't have, you got brownie points. You get extra credit. You didn't have to, and therefore, why should you have to repeat the Shemona Esrei? And for Tosfos, Tosfos is asking, you see from these cases that something's a little amiss, because if Marv was really not obligatory, then why would you have to repeat a Shemona Esrei in the morning if you forgot Marv? And why would I have to tell me that, the reason why you don't have to repeat Yalav Yavo, Marv, is because we don't sanctify the new moon? Just say, because you didn't have to say it in the first place. It was only brownie points. And for Tosfos, Yeshlama, Hadar Min Tfilas Arvos Shus. What do we mean by the fact that Tfilas Arvos and Marv, you can pick and choose if you want? That, if you want to do it, you could. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You know what it means? Hadar Min Tfilas Arvos Shus, Hainu Lugabi Mitzvah Acheres. It means if you have another mitzvah going on in your life, then you could boycott Marv. It's okay. Because you're not boycotting, because you're being osik in another mitzvah. V'yoveris, and that other mitzvah is a passing mitzvah. It means it's that otherwise you lose out on the mitzvah. The azamrina and titchet tfilas arvis m'pnei. Avol chinam en le'levala. But gratuitously, to go ahead and skip over Marv, you're not allowed to do that. So it's that Marv, and really was very interesting, because Marv, Ikradin, yes. It wasn't obligatory, but it's still very powerful and very holy, and therefore, only if you have a very, very good excuse are you allowed to miss it.
Well, the same with Nikkur and chakras?
No. So with those prayers, we don't have that dispensation.
You have to do another mitzvah?
It's you have to weigh it out, but it doesn't have that same dispensation. It doesn't have the same dispensation. Now, Tosfos does say, there's another Tosfos, very good what you're asking, because, excellent Joel, because there's another Tosfos. Tosfos says on excellent. There's a Tosfos here on Lamed Aleph. Tosfos says it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th Tosfos. Rav Ashi Avik Abraisa, the second to last line of that Tosfos. Amar Rav Yirmiyah ha'osik b'tzarich yitzur b'ka'osik b'divrei Torah dami. So he says that someone that is osik b'tzarich yitzibur does not have to daven at all. It's like he's osik b'divrei Torah, and he's absolved, he's exempt from davening. And somebody, let's say, has a really important position, maybe even a Rav, that's doing very important communal matters, or maybe he's a politician that is advocating, or in a certain respect, he's maybe whatever it is, could be. Then he doesn't have to daven. He's osik b'tzarich yitzibur. That would be a heter to not daven any of the tefillas. The shachris, mincha, any of the tefillas. But otherwise, to pass up on Marv gratuitously, just for nothing, then you're not allowed to do it. That's how we paskin l'maisa. So if something's very, very pressing, and he's really involved in something important, then potentially he could. I always ask a question, call up, and ask a shayla. But otherwise, even though Marv Me'ikar Adin is a rishus, we treat it today like a chov, like obligation. Now, I referenced the fact that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became the new Nasi. I just want to point out something very fascinating, and that is if you look back on, again, I know it's hard turning all these pages, but if you look back at Daf, it's Chav Zayin Amud Beis. And it's It's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the bottom. Ela nukme l'Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. They were trying to choose a new president, not the president of America, but the president of the Bezdin Lahavdil, right? So the other president here in this story was impeached. It was Rabbi Gamliel. He was impeached, and therefore they needed a new president. They were trying to choose. They were deliberating and trying to really reach a decision. Said, Nukmei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Let's choose Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to Chacham. He has many different strengths and advantages. He's a wise man. Fu Usher, he's a wealthy man. So obviously wisdom is a prerequisite to be the president of the Beis Din. You can't be a fool. You have to be very, very sagacious and scholarly. If he has money, he can't be bought off by anybody. He won't be bribed. You hope that he won't. And V'hu Asiri LaEzra, he also has pedigree. He's a 10th generation from, I'm sorry?
I think they give another reason why Usher is a benefit. He can pay off, actually he can pay off the Romans.
Yeah, the Gemara is going to say that. Yeah, that's Gemara's reason. Yeah, I'm going to say that in a second. Yeah, shkarach. Yeah. So he's also a 10th generation descendant of Ezra, right? So it means that it's yichus. He can fall back on his yichus. Where hopefully he has a spiritual DNA. 10 generations from Ezra. Yeah. Obviously, if they ask him complicated, challenging questions, he'll be able to decipher and decode it. The Kaiser, the Caesar of Rome, he'll be able to, take care of that. Because he has the merit of his forebears, of his patriarchs, of his ancestors. So they asked him, do you want to be the Reish Mesifta? Do you want the job? Do you want to become the Rosh Hashiva, the Rosh of Beis Din? So he said to them, I have to first consult the members of my family. He went and asked his wife. It's interesting that he says members of my family. I mean, why didn't he just say I have to ask my wife? Because he didn't end up consulting. He mentions he consults with his family. It says he consults with his wife. So it could be that it's just euphemistic, that it could be tznius wise. Like he says, listen, none of their business, my domestic affairs, that I'm going to have a very private conversation with my wife. So he says, listen, I'm going to give counsel with my family members. And it could be also because we have a Masorah that maybe he was 18 years old. If he's 18 years old, so how old is his wife? 15 years old, So maybe he doesn't say, he says, listen, I'm going to go ask my elders, I'm going to consult with my family members, but he goes to his wife. Maybe, I don't know. But anyhow, he says he asked his wife. He went to Imlach B'Dibisu, he went to ask his wife, which is a very interesting lesson in Shalom Bayis for Elazar ben Azariah, the great Elazar ben Azariah. You can't even begin to think about his greatness. He doesn't make a move without asking his wife permission, right? Okay, so right, they say the biggest tip that they tell every chassan is just to say yes, honey, yes, honey. Right? It's the most important thing. Agree with everything. She said, should I push you off the bridge? Yes, honey, push me off the bridge. Whatever, yes, just do. You go along with whatever she wants. Okay, so Amalei, she says to him. It says he asked his wife. He says she didn't have so much confidence in him. She said maybe they're going to fire you. Okay, it could be. He was very young. She says. So she says, listen, that's a real, that's something that really boosts his self-esteem. The first thing, he goes to his wife and says, listen, I've got this phenomenal promotion. The boss they want to, and she says, how do you know you'll last? Maybe they'll ditch you. Maybe they'll fire you. So,
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar.
Well, yeah. What
do you want? Come home. But listen. It's interesting because you see the Haman learned from the Chachamim. Right? Obviously, Elazar ben Azariah was after Haman, but obviously he had a Masorah from way back. Haman went to Zeresh and asked her for advice, and Zeresh gave him all the wrong advice, of course, right? But anyhow, so Amalos, he said to her, he says, if I can have that high pedestal for even one day, it's worth it. It's good for my resume. It's good for my curriculum vitae. It's good for my CV. I was Rosh Hashanah, even if it doesn't work out more than one day, obviously he also didn't have so much confidence or hope or faith in himself. I don't know. Anyhow, so Amalei Leslach Yerusa. So she says another thing. She says, "But listen, not gonna have respect for you. You don't have a white beard yet. See, a white beard is an advantage, right?" Anyhow, so he says, "Hahu Yoma Bar Tamni Sar Shane Havi Asrachishle." I'm sorry. Hahu Yoma Bar Tamni Sar Shane Asrachishle Nisa. So a nace happened for him, and he had 18 rows of white hair on his beard.
It's like,
all right.
Got it.
I translated right. It's 18 rows of. Chavches.
Yeah, that's interesting. 18 rows of hair.
Yeah, 18 rows. Okay. So I just want to point out a fascinating that some say, I saw in the Achronim, I saw several Mekoros for this, that first of all, Al Pi Kabbalah, I don't have time for it, unfortunately, but Al Pi Kabbalah, there's a lot what they speak about, the 18 rows of white hair. what it represents, because the beard represents the beard represents a person's supernal wisdom, and that's why Reb Chaim Kanievsky is very strict. He tells everybody that comes to him. One guy called me and told me, Reb Chaim said I should grow a beard. What does this mean? I say, he tells everybody to grow a beard. Most people, okay? But it's important though, because Reb Chaim says it's important. But the beard is considered to be the glory of the man. No offense to those that don't have beards. So you know what I'm saying? But he says the beard, and the hair that comes from the beard is considered to be nesivo shel chachma, pathways of wisdom. And it's considered to also connect to the spheros, to the divine emanations. Now obviously this is very, very deep. But the Achronim say that the reason why he went to consult his wife is because the Mishnah tells us that different tradesmen, different craftsmen, whatever it is, different professions, they have to be with their wives, spend time with their wives on a different frequent basis. And it's brought down that, let's say that a Talmid Chacham has to be with his wife, because many times they went to study in yeshiva, they spent the whole the week away from their spouses, but at least once a week they have to go and spend time with their spouses, to be with their spouses, to give their spouses their ona, the mitzvah ona, the conjugal rights. Okay. But it's brought down from Avos Reb Nassan that a Rosh Yeshiva, Rosh of Bezdin, that he has to spend time with his wife only once a month. So that's why he has to go running to his wife to ask her permission. Because as a Talmid Chacham, he was required to be with her, spend time, take her out for dinner at least once a week. Now, he's cutting back to only once a month. So that's why he has to get permission. Right? And it's fascinating, right? Very interesting. Okay, now, let's go weiter. Now we're going to go to Daf Lamed Aleph from the base. Oh, excuse me 1 second. Let me just turn this off.
31B.
31B. Okay. Okay. Now, where it gets very wide, the lines. It's the. You see where there's the 2 dots there at the very end of the 3rd wide line. So we're on the next word. Pasuk is. Could you read the pasuk, please? There, it's the 4th wide line. It starts in. The pasuk is based on Shmuel Aleph. Does it quote the whole pasuk there? What?
Let me see if it has it. I think it does.
Right, that's it. Yeah. Imroya Tira?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Okay, perfect. Okay. So the pasuk says that Chana, Chana's devastated. She wants desperately to have a child. She doesn't have any child. She's very, very upset. She says, Imroya Tira. What did it say after Imroya Tira? Okay. She says, you should see my plight. I want to have a child. So Amra Belazar. Amra Chana. So Rabbi Belazar said, Amra Chana Fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chana says to God, Ribbon Shalom, Master of the universe, Imra Mutav. So Imra Mutav. If basically, which means, how does he translate it there in the art scroll? Imra.
Right, Tira?
Yeah.
If you take note.
Okay, and then how does he, when he says mutav, she says, Rabban Shalom, Imroya, mutav, if you will see. Moshe, you have the Sensino? You see what it says here?
When I again seduce myself with him.
Right before that, yeah. Right before that.
Poking him into suspecting of my...
It's the 4th line, the wide lines. She says, Amr Chana L'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabban Shalom, Imra
If you take note,
If you take note of my suffering, grant me a child, fine.
If you see me, muta, fine. In other words, if you take note, if you look at me and understand my plight, v'im lav, and if not, tir'eh, right, it's tir'eh.
If you will take note, tireh, I will take steps of force. It just says tireh, it doesn't
What is, how did you translate it? It doesn't
translate.
Tira means that you'll be forced basically to look at me. All right? How will we be forced?
I will take steps to force that outcome.
Okay. Tira means that you will have to look at me. Imra, if you look at me, then you're okay. If you take note of me, if you heed my call, if you understand my plight, okay. But otherwise, you're going to have to pay attention to me. Why? Because Eilech, I'm going to go Vistarser, and I'm going to seclude myself Bifnei Elkanah, in front of Elkanah, my Baali, my husband. V'kiva de Mistrana, and since I secluded myself, I violated the Yichud, the Isser of Yichud, the Isser of prohibit of secluding myself with another man. Mashkli Mei Saita, they're going to force me to drink the waters of Saita. V'ata Oisa Tarascha Plester, and you will not make your Torah into a falsehood. What does it mean you won't make your Torah into a falsehood? Shemnemar, because the pasuk says that a woman who is accused falsely of being a willing partner in a seduction or secluding herself with another man and sinning, so that if she was barren, then she'll be remembered, then she will have a child. Okay. Now the Gemara says further that there's another opinion. What's that? She gets a special blessing, yeah. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says that if she never had a child, then she will start having children. That's the bracha that she gets. Rabbi Kiva says that if that's the case, then all women that are barren, that can't conceive, will go ahead and seclude themselves, with another man. They'll go to the neighbor and say, hi, let's go together. And then they'll be accused falsely by their husbands, and then they'll have babies. He says, it doesn't make sense. So Rabbi Kiva says what will happen is instead of that, he says, a little further, he says that Yechul kol karis kulon v'yistasru v'zu shaloi kilkul nefkedes el malamet shem hoisi yoledis b'sar. If normally the woman would give birth and she would have pain in childbirth, yoledis b'revach, she'd give birth easily. Ksarim, if she gave birth to diminutive, to little children, to midgets, she'll have aruchim, she'll have tall children. Shcharim yoledis levanim, she has dark children, dark complexion, she'll have fair complexion children, right? Echad, if she only has one child, she'll have two children. So, okay, that's what the Gemara says. Famous question that's asked by Pnei Yeshua and many other Achronim is that how in the world did she get away with this? How could she even consider this? Okay, so ask the Pnei Yeshua, Bamba Kasha. He says it's against, it violates the Torah for a woman to do yichud, to seclude herself with another married woman, to seclude herself with another man. It's Isma D'Oraisa. Okay, she has very noble motives. She wants to be able to have a child. Well, what gives her license to go ahead and to commit a terrible avera of secluding herself with another man? She's not going to do anything. First of all, she's setting herself up for potential sin. But even if she doesn't sin, it's still an isser. The fact is that yichud is not necessarily the byproduct of what's going to happen. It's the isser itself. That's A. And then B says, if she's going to have to become a sota, even if she's going to be proven innocent, and therefore get the blessing, which is according to Rabbi Shmuel, the blessing, not according to Rabbi Kiva. Remember, Rabbi Shmuel holds that you get a baby out of that. Rabbi Kiva says you don't get a baby out of that. If you already have a baby, then the baby will be a better baby, physically, right? She says, but what are they going to do? They could take the name of God, the Shem Hashem, they're going to put it into the water, and it's going to get erased. Now that it caused Hashem's name to be erased, that's also Ism D'Oraisa. Says, so she's violating two Isurim. That's Pnei Yeshua's kasha. And then you'll say, well, Chana didn't know. The Gemara lists Chana as one of the 7 Nevios. The Gemara Megillah, Daf Yud Aleph, Yudalef, says that Chana was one of the 7 prophetesses. She was a great woman. Of course she knew. So Pnei Yeshua has a fascinating pshat, a radical pshat of shtickle, because it's not kipshuto. He says she never would do it. She was just playing games with Hashem, basically. It was a ruse. It was a contrivance. She wanted Rabban Shalom to give her a child. So she was saying, Rabban Shalom, come on, I could do this, but I wouldn't. She would never do it. That's what Pnei Yeshua says. She never thought of doing it. She never imagined doing it. She never would seclude herself. She never would allow her Hashem's name to be erased. But she was saying to the Marshal, it's not fair. I could do it, and then you would give me a child, so give me a child. That's Pnei Yeshua. The Beis Meir says that the same way an Arusa, a woman who's betrothed, remember, they used to have 2 stages to the marriage process, the betrothal, the Erusin, and the Nisuin. So there's a Arusa that goes ahead and secludes herself. In the Beis Hamikdash, they did not examine, they did not do the Sota exam, they did not do the Sota inspection for an Arusa, only for a woman that was fully married. Even though Arusa is considered to be married, to the degree that she would need a get. But in regards to this, if a woman that's an Arusa would seclude herself, do Yichud, then she's Overas al-Adash. She's considered to be violating something very severe because they can't do a Sota exam on her. They can only do it on a Nesuah. So therefore, he says that a Nesuah, he holds like this, very, very interesting. He holds that a woman that's fully married, that could get the exam, even though it's not the best thing to do, but it wouldn't not be considered to be doing an Aveira if she was proved innocent. Retroactively, if she's proved innocent, then she wouldn't be violating Yichud either. Erasing Hashem's name? The Beis Meir, it's a doiflik. He doesn't answer that question. He only answers the first question. But fascinating, Beis Meir, that she wouldn't be considered to be over because she could get the bedika. Okay, that's a Beis Meir. Now, there are many, many other pshatim. The Doiviv Mishorim, the Chabiner, and the Moray Masada, I think the Nesiv, they say that that she says, I'm going to be nister, I'm going to seclude myself in front of Baili, in front of my husband, in front of Elkanah. So she's not violating Yichud, which means that basically that he's allowed to accuse her and basically put her in this limbo situation, even though she technically didn't violate any Yichud. As a matter of fact, that's based on the Rambam, because the Rambam says, what? And the test will work, yeah, that's a big finish also. The Rambam holds, remember, this happens a lot of times in the offices. And anybody that has an office has to be very, very careful about this. Okay, the halacha is that if you have 2 men together with 1 woman, then there's no yichud. Why? Because 1 man will speak the other man out of doing the aveira. But 2 women with 1 man, the man may be overbearing and be too influential, and the woman will be too vulnerable, and therefore that would be yichud. Okay? So the Rambam says a fascinating aside. He says that even though there's no yichud when it comes to 2 men and a woman, however, in regards to being Makana Isha for Sota, that would still consider to be Sota. Even though there's no yichud being transgressed. Yeah, there's no yichud being transgressed. The man could still go ahead and say, I saw you with 2 men, I don't like it. I'm allowed to be with 2 men. That's not considered to be seclusion. I would never do something, and the 1 man would never allow the other man to sin. 2 God-fearing Jews. He says, I don't care. I still consider you to be that maybe you did something, and therefore he's allowed to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash for the soda, not the soda drink, for the sota drink. Okay? That's the Rambam. So there's a Rambam. So according to that Rambam, you can answer over here that she didn't violate Yichud. She was with 2 men, and he could still go ahead and accuse her. And so that doesn't answer the Mechikas Hashem part, but it answers the Yichud part. Another Chiddush is that normally we say that, what? Oh, very good. We can say that in a second, yeah. Another thing we say is that when it comes to a door, if there's an open door, then you're allowed to be with a woman alone. As long as there's a door open, that works for Yichud. But for Sota, a man could still accuse his wife even if the door was still open. So it could be that she secluded herself with a man, but the door was open and he could still be Makana, and therefore she's not getting the Aveira of doing Yichud. Now, as far as Mechikas Hashem, there's a fascinating Chiddush. I forgot who I think, it's the Birchas Aaron. Birchas Aaron says something fascinating. So there are those that say that that would be having the name erased in the water is a groma. It's indirect, because she's not actually going and stamping out the name. She's putting it in the water, and the water's dissolving it, disintegrating it. But the Birchas Aaron has a fascinating aside. He says, even though a woman doesn't have the mitzvah of Peruvu, we possibly ladies doesn't have the mitzvah of Peruvu, he says, but it could be that she paskined like Rabbi Lazar, who paskins like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, that holds that a woman is mitzvah puravu. And if a woman is mitzvah puravu, then she could say, I have a mitzvah to have a child. Essay darchalaisa say. The positive mitzvah of building a family is darchalaisa say, of not secluding myself and of not being mochek Hashem. So that takes care of everything. It takes care of the problem of secluding yourself. One last conundrum, one last issue, a very, very big issue, and that's the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Soita Perek Gimel Halacha Chaf Beis says beferish Soita Sheshasa v'Nimtzas Tahira. Listen to this fascinating Rambam. You're not going to be able to sleep at night unless we finish this. You ready? Rambam says, Soita Sheshasa. This woman, she had shalom bayis problems, and her husband got jealous and started accusing, said, I saw you with Chaim Yankel. And Chaim Yankel likes you too much, and you're playing games, and you're being infidelity, you're being unfaithful to me. And go to the Beis Hamikdash and get your drink. So what happens? And then V'nimtzas Torah. She's found to be pure. That he accused her falsely. So the Rambam says that if she had a sickness, Yasur the sickness will be removed, the Saber, and also she'll get pregnant. If she couldn't get pregnant, V'tel Zachar, and she'll have a baby boy, all these beautiful things. And then he says, V'ndarka Leila Pekoshi, if she normally would have birth pangs and travails, she'd have complicated childbirth, she'll be able to have the baby will just pop out. Pop goes the weasel, So 1 second. Big problem here. Shari Knesset Agdoleh asked a question. I'm sure others also asked a question. Rambam, who's he going like? First of all, the Rambam is a Pella, Atzuma. Because the Rambam says that if she was sick, she'll be cured. Where does the Gemara say that? I listen, it could be sometimes I'm tired and I'm distracted, I have a lot on my head, a lot on my plate. I didn't see it in the Gemara. Did anybody recognize the fact that the Gemara said that she was sick and she'll be cured? Okay, so it could be that maybe when he says sick, he means that she couldn't conceive, she was barren. And she had like a fertility issue. She had, let's say, her, urethra or her fallopian tubes or, whatever it was, and that's what he means. That's not the lotion. I'm proposing that. I don't know for sure. Maybe that's what he means. Because it follows, because he said that if she couldn't give birth and she gives birth, so she's cured from that. But let me ask you a question. Where does the Rambam get this from that he says, and also, if she had a complicated childbirth, she'll have a good childbirth. If she didn't give birth to healthy children, she'll have healthy children. Is it like Rabbi Shmuel or is it like Rabbi Akiva? First, it sounds like he's passing like Rabbi Shmuel, that if she could never give birth before, she's all of a sudden going to be able to give birth. And then it sounds like he's passing Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, no. That's not going to happen, that if she couldn't give birth before she'll give birth, because then all the women are going to run to become adulterous, they're going to pretend to be adulterers. It means that if she needed help giving birth, she had babies before, but she could have, better babies, whatever. So who's he going like? Is he going like Shmuel or Rabbi Akiva? What a problem. Okay, there's two potential answers. The first answer is that if you look at the Gemara site, the Daf Chavav, it brings down the same machlokes as Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva of what will be the result, what will be the magic panacea for the woman who was accused of being adulterous and wasn't. What will happen to her? Will she have a baby? She couldn't have a baby. Will she have healthier children? And it seems to reverse the Shitas. And whatever Rabbi Shmuel said in this Gemara, he says the opposite in Saita, and whatever Rabbi Akiva said, he says the opposite in Saita. And it could be that Rambam wasn't sure. He wasn't machriya which version was accurate, and therefore he had to bring down both Shitas. There's another answer. That it could be that the Rambam holds Paschals like Rabbi Shmuel, even though machlokes Rabbi Shmuel or Rabbi Akiva, that's itself. But it could be Paschals Rabbi Shmuel, that if she could never give birth, she'll have a baby. And he's saying, if that will happen, such a miracle, that she can never give birth, she'll have a baby, then certainly, if she was able to have a baby, everything else will fall into place. Notice that Rabbi Akiva, it's not a stira, but it's being moisif, that could potentially be the resolution of the problem. Okay, so we only scratched the surface. We covered Baruch Hashem, several dafim of the week, but there's so much more. But I know everybody's tired. So Bez Hashem, next time Bez Hashem will continue. And this mamash Torah contains everything, all the most beautiful. It's a treasure trove, mamash. Tamaru ki tov Hashem. Taste it; it's delicious. Okay, shkach everybody for listening. Thank you for coming. Shkach.